We are working on getting, we're here, that we already have him lined up. We have with us today someone who I have become really excited to get to know as a bit of a friend and colleague, Joe Bishop-Henchman, Executive Vice President of the National Taxpayers Union Foundation. And Joe, welcome to the Dave Elswick Show.
Morning, Ryan. Great to be with you.
Man, it was great to see you down in New Orleans and have a conversation about Arkansas and the exciting things we're working on here with taxation.
Yeah, no, it was a good trip. The weather was about the same as it is in DC in the summer, so no surprises there. But it's always good to catch up with old friends and to find out what's going on at the state level of the country, and a lot of great things are happening right now.
Well, there's two kind of topics that I want to cover with you this morning. One being we can talk about a little bit on the tax side in states, so I know that you are a wealth of information there, but lots of debate back and forth about how helpful the One Big Beautiful Bill, now the One Big Beautiful Act, will be to our country. And we've had a little bit of conversation about it, but from your perspectives, what are some of the big win takeaways that we can anticipate from the One Big Beautiful Bill?
Well, first and foremost is it avoids an automatic $500 billion tax increase that was going to happen on January 1.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the tax increase nobody intended to happen when the tax bill was first passed in the first Trump administration in 2017. Just by the way the Senate rules work, a lot of the provisions had to be temporary, so they had an expiration date, and the expiration date that they happened to pick was December 31, 2025, so
Mm-hmm.
the end of this year. So we had this ticking clock that we knew about, that something had to happen, or the tax rates would go up, the child tax credit would be cut in half, the standard deduction that 90% of taxpayers take would fall in half, a huge $500 billion tax increase. And
Mm-hmm.
that's been avoided now. For a lot of people, the tax code will remain the same, which maybe doesn't sound like a win, but it's a win when you had this huge tax increase
Right.
looming as an automatic thing on January 1.
Right.
Probably the second thing that I would point to is a provision that maybe not a lot of people are aware of, although I think more people should be, and that's a policy known as full expensing. And this is the idea that when a business spends money on new equipment, invests in productive activity, they shouldn't be taxed on that dollar amount that they spend.
Right.
And unfortunately, that's been our practice, where if you choose to invest, we treat it as if it's a money in your pocket, and or money in the pocket of the business, or it's like a dividend being paid or something, and we tax it in full. Full
Right.
expensing eliminates that phantom tax or that tax on phantom profits that you didn't earn. It's a literal tax on investment that's now being avoided.
And so
and
that right there is a positive that would incentivize business expansion.
Yeah, and we had it on a temporary basis from 2019 to 2022, which it's hard to see with the pandemic, but if you take that out of the equation, we had very strong investment growth, very strong job creation, certainly in 2019. And I think a lot of that was attributed to the full expensing policy. And now that's
Mm-hmm.
back, and it's back on a permanent basis. And so we're very excited about that.
And so business responds well to certainty, locking in the tax cuts, locking in the full expensing. Those are things that business is excited about.
Yeah, business is excited about it, and I think a lot of taxpayers should be excited about
Yes.
it too. Nobody wants to have a surprise tax increase next year, and it's good that we're avoiding that.
Right. Yeah. And there's other decisions that are being made in that bill, about healthcare, energy. Are there any other areas that you focused in on about the benefits for the taxpayer and the citizen?
Well, as the name suggests, One Big Beautiful Bill, there's a lot of different pieces in it, and I could go through all of them. We could spend all day talking about the tax bill, I'm sure.
Yes.
Taking away a lot of the green energy tax credits from the Biden administration, phasing those out, and which were very targeted. Implementing the Trump campaign promises of no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security, making sure the child tax credit remains and is actually made a little bit more generous. So it'll be $2,200 per child instead of $2,000 per child. And some changes to the charitable deduction and the state and local income, state and local tax deduction that are big deals in a lot of places, especially very high income, high tax places. And then reforms to Medicaid and the SNAP program, the food stamp program, to more focus those programs on those who truly need it, rather than making it a very broad entitlement program. And for, just looking at SNAP, for instance, finding a way to make it so that we changed the program, which over the last 20 years, SNAP, the food stamp program, has quadrupled, even as the poverty rate has declined. Or in the Medicaid program, finding a way to grow it at the same rate as the overall economy, rather than twice the rate of the economy, which is just not sustainable.
Yeah.
A lot of discussion on those provisions, and certainly how they'll affect states, which are partners with the federal government, and how they're administered.
Right. And, so this is, again, putting more money, or keeping the money in the pockets of the individuals, that we would have had this anxiety once we looked at our first checks in 2026, seeing what would have been taken out. And most of this, again, is a great way of combating, when you're talking about lowering taxes, keeping them low, is a good way of combating inflation. How are we looking there in that area, in like inflation, as we combat that? I know you pay quite a bit of attention to this as you research the tax policies.
Sure.
How is that? How are we looking right now?
Well, it's less bad than it was, that's for sure. And it was, of course, pretty bad under the Biden administration. Inflation, I think, crested at about 9%. And that's the overall average. Obviously, some things cost more than that. Some things cost less than that. Mm-hmm. It's come down quite a bit. So far this year, we've actually, if you look at maybe individual months, our inflation rate has been below what the Federal Reserve targets, which is about 2% a year. That's what they consider to be the goal. But, shouldn't be more than that, shouldn't be less than that. It should be about 2% a year. But if you include the last half year of the Biden administration, because if you're looking at an annual basis, that's how it is, we're still above that 2%. And it remains to be seen how much the tariff changes will show up in that data. We haven't really seen it yet. And every month, everybody says, "Oh, this is the month that it's going to appear in the data," and then it doesn't really materialize. But I'm sure it will eventually. And how much of that will be a one-time shock versus a continuing thing? But I don't want to discount anybody that's going to the grocery store or going to the gas station and they're not back down to 2019 prices. I don't know if anything can ever get them back down to 2019 prices, but they are growing more slowly than they were a year ago or 2 years ago.
Yeah, that's what I hear is, there's reports that we're lower, inflation is lowering in its its rate of increase. But when you go to the grocery store and the meat section is still, still high. Some of the necessities, again, high. Folks are still feeling that stickiness of high inflation that you said we got as high as 9% under the Biden administration. See, that's just something that's going to take a while to bounce back from.
And you see that in business decisions too, because obviously when people are cutting back or trying to make their dollar go further, it changes what they buy, and that affects businesses. So, I mean, we've had the grocery sector go through a lot of turmoil. We've seen the hospitality and travel sector go through a lot of turmoil. Just because, I mean, it's very obvious in the data that people are hurting, that people are having to make hard decisions about what they're spending their money on. And a lot of that is a result of that inflation. And I feel like it's a lesson that maybe politicians learn every generation that people really don't like high inflation. And I guess now we've learned it again after we forgot it after learning it in the 1970s.
Yeah. Well, I was coming in there at the back end of the 1970s. I remember that being a driver for how my family moved around. We were looking for work that hadn't been as impacted by the economic downturn of the 1970s and the rise of Reagan and trying to build out of that. Again, I can sit back and say because of the economic environment here or nationwide, my family had to move to another state to try to find opportunity. So it's interesting how the high cost of living and inflation. I've even seen some reports saying that the high cost of living is having families plan, or couples plan to have families later in life, trying to wait for the right economic moment. So it's interesting that we got to try to deal with these things and get it right. But we were talking about how inflation increase, it's coming down some, but you set up for the potential for governments to have some surpluses. And so we're about to come up hard on a break. And so I want to talk about states' surpluses and how revenue surpluses can maybe be best utilized. So we'll talk about that again, 101.1 FM, The Answer, with Joseph Henchman Bishop of the National Taxpayers Union. Welcome back to the Dave Elswick Show. Ryan Norris filling in today for Dave Elswick until the 9 o'clock hour. On the phone with us, we have Joe Bishop-Henchman, Executive Vice President of the National Taxpayers Union Foundation. And we were talking about the One Big Beautiful Bill, talked about some inflation. And, and during the times of inflation, John, I don't know if this is necessarily everywhere all the time, but since you have states that have, for example, sales taxes, Arkansas has sales taxes, you're seeing that the cost of things are going up due to inflation. That means the percentage that there's more revenue that gets actualized by a state that has a sales tax like Arkansas, and we end up with some surplus revenues. Is that a common feature of high inflation times with states that have sales taxes, or is this kind of a unique Arkansas thing? What are you seeing across the country?
Yeah, states are still in a decent revenue situation. There was a big windfall after COVID. It kind of could have gone either way. I remember during COVID, there was real worry that revenue systems would collapse completely. Obviously, if no one's working or buying anything, or there's no economic activity, that could be a real danger. It ended up being quite the opposite. It ended up being states found a way to save a lot of their expenses while they still brought in a lot of revenue. And then the federal government added to that and sent out a lot of aid from the federal government to the states.
Right.
So a lot of states are really sitting pretty on a lot of revenue. There's exceptions. California is still somehow running a deficit. New York's in trouble. But for the most part, states are in a good fiscal situation. What's changing now is after maybe several years in a row of very high revenue growth, it's now plateauing. It's now flattening out. And that just may be a fact that, the inflation may be driving into that, because if prices are going up, that means sales tax revenue is going up, but maybe not as fast, maybe artificially faster than the real economy is. So what we're seeing a lot of a leveling off of state revenue, and this may really be the last year that we see aggressive tax cutting at the state level. And we've seen that over the last couple of years, where states took a lot of those surpluses. Nearly every state, I would say almost every state except Arkansas, took a lot of the surplus revenues and made sure that it got back in people's pockets, and that too high tax rates and uncompetitive tax rates were brought back down to earth.
Yeah, and we're focused on that here in Arkansas. Lots of candidates running on it, lawmakers who have promised work on it, our governor as well, about driving down the Arkansas income tax. And since 2015, I think we've cut about 9 times. 8, 9 times. Yeah. So, working that down, but you're projecting that these are going to be plateauing out a little bit less to maybe work with. So time horizons for, say, states that want to lower income taxes to zero might be stretched out a little more.
And there's work that Arkansas can do on the federal bill, which maybe is a reason to take a look at the state tax code this year as well. Arkansas does not join the federal government in the full expensing provision I talked about earlier. Arkansas is still imposing taxes on investment that people engage in, that businesses engage in. Arkansas does not have the generous standard deduction that the federal government has on the federal tax code. So people are paying more on their state taxes in Arkansas than they are in other states. Arkansas still taxes, or it requires sales tax collection on businesses that have less than 200 transactions, even if they're $1 a piece. Arkansas puts that obligation on out-of-state businesses. And then, of course, as you mentioned, the income tax as a whole is still a pretty high burden for people in Arkansas, and especially in the competitive context where you've got Tennessee on one side, Texas on another side. Mississippi just passed a bill to begin phasing out its income tax. So in terms of staying competitive, it's always good for policymakers and everybody to take a look at your tax code and think about, well, what can you do to make sure that you're keeping up with everyone else?
Right. Yeah, because at State Policy Network, colleagues that I've met from those states, we're all talking about, what are we doing on tax codes next year? How are we going to make it more more feasible for our taxpayers to keep their money, spend their money the way that they want? And it's a dynamic place. Just like, again, last year when you were in the state with us, we talked about Arkansas tax policy, past, present, and future. And in your presentation, you kind of hit on all the dynamic policy that's out there. So it's not a vacuum that we're making these decisions in. We are in competition with other states who want to try to do right by their people too. So that all said, if we wanted to know more about National Taxpayers Union, Joe, where can we go, and what are some of the things that we need to know about NTU?
Sure. Check us out at ntu.org, and we view our job as making sure there's someone fighting for the taxpayer at all levels of government. So if there's an IRS hearing happening, someone from our team is in the room and making sure that the taxpayer's perspective is represented. If there's a court hearing happening about a taxpayer protection, like a supermajority requirement or a 2/3 requirement, or even just the definition of what a tax is versus what a fee is, we've filed a brief. We're in the room. At the federal level, we're all over. Sometimes we're the only one fighting for the long term, not just the short term, or the general interest, not just the special interest. And at the state level, we work with groups all over the country, including AFP in Arkansas, in order to provide research, provide information, and provide perspective, and make sure that good decisions are being made in state capitals as well.
Well, we appreciate your partnership and look forward to doing more work together as we head into the 2027 legislative cycle here in Arkansas, Joe. So I know you and I will be chatting quite a bit more.
Yeah, anytime.
Well, we appreciate you for your time. That's Joseph Bishop-Henchman with the National Taxpayers Union. Great guy, great organization. Learn more. Go to ntu.org. Learn more about him. But we'll be back after these messages. Ryan Norris filling in for Dave Elswick here at 101.1 FM, The Answer.